Chris, welcome. Everyone here has known you for many years as the primary substitute co-host for Gay USA. And we really were shocked to wake up yesterday morning, as we're taping on Wednesday, and hear Chris Cooper in Central Park, bird watcher, confrontation with racist white woman.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise to me that it took that turn. Not the part about a confrontation with the dog walker. That's almost routine in Central Park for us birders. But the fact that it took that sudden racist dive was a bit of a surprise for me as well.
Well, let me start by asking how you are, because you suddenly, in a matter of moments, turned into a worldwide phenomenon. God knows when it's going to end. But how is this affecting you personally at the moment?
It's stressful a bit. It's a lot of people trying to make various demands, and this one wants an interview, and this one wants you to do this, that's kind of stressful, which makes me realize if that's what I'm getting, oh my God, what she must be getting. It must be a tsunami heading her way. So anyway, her being the woman who was walking her dog off leash in the ramble. So.
Who also happens to be named Cooper, Amy Cooper. But talk about just take a moment to just tell us how it unfolded.
Sure. New York City, to give you just a setting, New York City sits on the Atlantic Flyway, which means that migratory songbirds coming back from their wintering grounds funnel up the coast, and they hit the metropolitan area, which is a sea of concrete, and smack in the middle of Manhattan is this beautiful emerald green rectangle where there's water and where there's growing things and where they can rest and refuel on their journey so that they can actually make it alive. And that's Central Park. And so Central Park aggregates the birds. They funnel in there, and it's a top birding destination. People come from all over the world to bird Central Park during migration. So one of the things that makes Central Park so special is there's several areas that are very productive for the wildlife. They are planted, they have things that grow there, they have waterways, and one of the most famous is the Ramble. Now, of course, the Ramble is also notoriously, at least in ages past, one of the areas where gay men used to hook up before we could be out and hook up legitimately. So, but that
had Grindr.
Yeah, exactly. Pre-Grindr, there was the Ramble.
Right. Or as your sister calls it, the Bramble.
Yeah. I know. I was like, no, it's the Ramble. You got it wrong. So anyway, a Ramble is a top birding spot, and because it is such a sensitive area, because there are so many things, there's so many incredible plantings there, and because there's so much wildlife there, and because it is such critical habitat for migrating birds, there is a rule that dogs must be on the leash at all times in the Ramble to protect the wildlife, to protect the habitat. It's posted on signs everywhere. So here I am in the Ramble, and this is an ongoing thing. Like I said, this goes back years that we have been fighting for enforcement of the leash laws in the Ramble. But here comes, a young woman, and her dog is off the leash and tearing through the plantings. So I say to her, excuse me, ma'am, dogs in the Ramble have to be on the leash at all times. You're standing right next to the sign that says that. And she says, oh, yeah, but, the dog runs are closed and he needs his exercise. And I'm like, I get that, but all you have to do is take the dog over the drive to the area that's outside the Ramble in Central Park, and you can let your dog run off the leash until 9 a.m. to your heart's content. And she's like, oh, no, that's too dangerous. And I'm like, so at this point, basically things devolved from there. I'll give you the short version. But when it became clear that she, wasn't interested in complying, I decided to videotape her scofflaw behavior, which is something a lot of us in the Ramble have been trying to do when we encounter an intransigent dog walker who, won't put their dog on the leash in the Ramble. Just so we document it and we can try and get some change. So I pulled out my cell phone and I started recording. She didn't like that. So she said, please stop recording me. And I had no intention of stopping recording her until she put the dog on the leash. She didn't like that. She started to come at me and I'm like, I didn't say this. I'm thinking we're supposed to be social distancing right now. So I said, please don't come near me. Please don't come near me. And finally she said her famous line, and this is where, up until then, it was just a conflict between a dog walker and a bird watcher. And here's where she took it to a dark place, when she said, if you don't stop recording me, I'm going to call the police and I'm going to tell them that an African-American man is threatening my life. And I'm like, oh boy, so what do I do now? Because, the implications for me are clear. We've seen far too many instances, far too many tragedies, far too many videotapes. And I just thought, I'm not going to capitulate to this. I'm not going to be, she's playing the race card. I'm not going to be racially intimidated. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, as if race wasn't a factor here. I'm not going to participate in my own dehumanization. I'm just not going to do it. So I kept videotaping or recording with my iPhone. And she, made the phone call to the police. And that's, you see all of that in the infamous now video that's gone viral. So, and then finally she puts, after slinging the dog around by the collar for a couple of seconds, which was really kind of unnerving, she finally puts the dog on the leash. And I said, thank you, and turned off the iPhone and went back to birding.
Now, what we don't see on the video, and can I ask you to adjust your screen a little? We're not seeing the top of your head. Just there we go. Thank you. We don't see what happened when the police arrived.
And I don't know what happened when the police arrived, because she couldn't tell them where in the ramble she was. Admittedly, ramble geography, it's called the ramble for a reason. It's a number of winding paths that go in every which way. We birders have been birding it for, since the dawn of time, so we know our way around the ramble, but she didn't know where in the ramble she was and couldn't describe it. So, the police were asking her where she was in the ramble, and she said, I don't know where I am. So anyway, as far as I was concerned, the episode was finished as soon as the dog went on the leash. That was what was my concern. And I went back to birding as usual. And I, had in the back of my head, okay, well, the police may be on their way, and, if and when they come, I will deal with that. But in the meantime, I came here to bird, so that's what I'm going to do.
But we know what's happened to African-American men forever, and including very recently, including, this week a couple of times, et cetera. Were you fearful for your life?
Was I fearful for my life? I don't know if I thought it through that far. I was nervous. I was a little bit rattled, I guess, by what had happened, even though, I try to make it like I'm a Vulcan from Star Trek and nothing can emotionally rattle me. I was a little rattled by the whole thing. But, one of the wonderful things about birding and about being in a place like the Ramble in Central Park is that it's got this wonderful calming effect. It's like a tranquilizer. So, I just sort of focused on my birding, and before I knew it, I was basically wrapping up my birding anyway at that point. So I just focused on my birding, chilled out, and then, left the park and left her to whatever she was going to do.
And then the world exploded. We should also mention that you are one of the main characters in the documentary about Central Park birders that ran on HBO, and I'm sure that people can still find that. So,
and a board member of the Audubon Society, and you have a long history in
New York City Audubon.
New York City Audubon, and you were a co-chair of GLAAD when it was still an activist group back in the day.
Yeah, before it became an award ceremony promoter. Yeah. This was back when GLAAD was still a New York-based organization, before it sort of metastasized into, it was in the process of becoming, it was national, but it wasn't, national with chapters and all of that. It was still a New York-based grassroots organization.
Now, and you've also been very involved in local politics and promoting particular candidates, mostly LGBT candidates, but all candidates, progressive candidates over the years.
And getting rid of Republicans in the New York State legislature.
I was going to say, and you're not quite getting it right. My goal in life was to flip the New York State Senate.
You did it.
You did it.
Yeah, and that wasn't necessarily about promoting, I mean, though I would love to promote progressive candidates and LGBTQ candidates, it was about promoting Democratic candidates who could then push out the Republican majority. And it took a long time, but we did it. I think, wasn't it UN who said like last week or that the quote that activism is a long haul or something like that?
Well, it is, and we're now on that haul nationally.
Now, what happened to this woman is she became infamous, and she was fired from her job at Franklin Pendleton. She tried to apologize. You said you would accept the apology if it was sincere, and she kept her dog on a leash.
Well, you gotta understand where I'm coming from on all of this. For me, the whole thing was about getting the damn dog on a leash. That's what it's about. It's been a problem with us for years. Then she took it someplace else, and that's on her. And she's unfortunately suffering the consequences for it. I say unfortunately, just because her life went from normal to collapsed in about 60 seconds.
Yeah,
and that's a hard thing. I can't begin to imagine. And for a lapse in judgment, a profound lapse in judgment, that was a racist act.
Because it could have been worse for you.
It could have been. We don't know that it would have. So, so I don't like to speculate that, this is what would have happened. It could have been worse. It wasn't. And so, since it wasn't, I'm not sure. I have very mixed feelings about the aftermath for her in particular, if what's happened has been proportional.
Well, I think I would agree with you that that's a conundrum, and I feel some ambivalence about that too. But every time I start to feel ambivalence, I see that tape again, and I realize how deliberately she tried to set you up for an arrest by the police at best, and very possibly worse. And the deliberation that she went through to make that statement and that accusation is so infuriating to me and so scary that I lose a lot of sympathy for her when I remember just how manipulative and racist and deliberate that act was.
Especially when we see what happened to people like George Floyd this week and in Minnesota. And you talked about Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia and what happened to him when he was just jogging through the street.
Right. Again, this is, I'm trying to look at this beyond her in the individual instance and look at the deeper undercurrent and how do we address that? Because that deeper undercurrent is what causes things like the death of Ahmaud Arbery and the death of George Floyd. And it's been going on for centuries, and it runs through this entire country and runs through this city, which so many people seem to be surprised about. They're like, wow, that this can happen in New York City. I'm like, where have you been? Did you not pay attention when Eric Garner got choked to death on Staten Island? Were you not paying attention when Amadou Diallo got blown away on his own doorstep? So, that's what I want to focus on, because, her split second, extremely poor judgment that led her to a racist place, she's paying the consequences for that. How do we start to address the underlying issue that led her there, that leads to all these deaths and all these problems? I think that's where the focus should be. I can't get inside her head. I don't know what she was thinking, but I imagine she was trying to get a leg up in the confrontation, because it was definitely a confrontation. And anybody in a confrontation is going to try to get an advantage. And the problem was where she went to get that advantage was a racist place, whether she realized it consciously or not. And it's had consequences for her.
and a very, very dangerous place. Racist, absolutely, horrifying, but the danger that she deliberately tried to put you in is unimaginable.
She reminded me of Mayella Ewell in To Kill a Mockingbird, pointing the finger at Tom Robinson and, and saying, he raped me, basically. And people understand that.
So we don't want to take you back to that dark place, but we want to be clear that this was not an inconsequential act or something to be glossed over at all. This is very, very serious.
And we're glad to see you well.
What happens now, and like I said, I'd like the focus to be on, what can we do to address this underlying current that runs through this city and this country, to try to amend that. And actually, I read something about how she's Canadian, which I'm like, seriously? A Canadian person went there like that? But I don't know if that's true or not. I don't have independent corroboration of the Canadian part.
Well,
we're very glad to see you. We're very glad that you're alive and well, and proud of you as, of course, a member of the Gay USA family. Happy to ride your coattails of association.
and if there's anything we can do,
can you make my life go back to normal?
Yeah.
You have to just put your head under the covers for a few days, and with any luck, it'll calm down. But you must have been totally assaulted by the news media. I can't even imagine how awful that's been for the last 24 hours.
Yeah, trying to get work done has been a little bit difficult, but
And there's a pandemic going on.
Huh?
I'm always happy to come and talk to you guys.
Good.
I just prefer not to be the news. I'd rather be talking about the news.
Well, you'll be back here soon co-hosting, and we look forward to that. And really, thank you so much, Chris, and so much love and support for you, from us, from everybody we've heard from Gay USA viewers and fans of you. Everybody is out here pulling for you.
Thanks, guys.
Love you, Chris. Take care.
Bye.